I'm Catriona Doan, President and CEO of Sport Calgary. Thanks everybody for joining us. First of all, thank you to Canada Sports Hall of Fame, Cheryl Bernard and the team. We're here physically distanced in this setting, and so we're really pleased to be able to be here in person and to be able to share this panel with all of you. So this is Sport Calgary's Resilience Mental Health Panel, sponsored by Headversity. Dr. Ryan Todd, thank you so much for your team that's here, setting this all up, bringing this panel back home to you guys. So what we figured was, at this time of uncertainty with the pandemic, there is definitely more stress, uncertainty in the world, the unexpected. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And so we thought of bringing this great group of community leaders in sport and experts in mental health and resilience. So we thought we would bring this panel to all of you. So just so everybody knows, you have been muted, and I believe there's no video on. We will be having a conversation with this panel, and then there's an opportunity for you to send in questions, and we will be having question and answer at the end. So I'm going to start by introducing our awesome panel that we have here today. Sheldon Kennedy won a Memorial Cup and a World Junior Gold Medal and competed for 3 teams in his 8-year NHL career. He is known for his courageous decision to charge his Major Junior Hockey League coach with sexual assault for the abuse that he suffered over a 5-year period while a teenager under his care. Through this disclosure and the important work that Sheldon continues to do, he has become an inspiration to millions of survivors around the world. Sheldon was co-founder of the Calgary and Area Child Advocacy Centre, the first of its kind in Canada, offering full wraparound services for victims of child abuse. He is also the co-founder of the Respect Group, which provides empowering online abuse, bullying, and harassment prevention education to sport organizations, schools, and the workplace. And I will say, we're in Canada Sports Hall of Fame. You're going to be inducted in 2021. It was going to be 2020. Yes. Watch the chairs. We were talking about these spinning chairs, so we have to tell each other to stop moving around. So you'll be inducted in 2021. So yes. Thank you, Sheldon.
Very honored. Congratulations.
Dr. Ryan Todd is a psychiatrist at Foothills Hospital in Calgary, where he has seen and treated thousands of individuals who have a mental illness as a result of trauma, medical, or surgical illness. Dr. Todd believes mental wellness can be learned and practiced by everyone, and that technology is a vital resource in helping bridge the gap between demand and mental health care today. This belief fueled his desire to start Headversity, a mental wellness tech company where he acts as CEO. Through Headversity, Dr. Todd envisions building a culture of mental wellness in the Canadian workforce through mobile, micro, and measurable training. So thank you for sponsoring this, and we'll be talking more about the app and what Headversity does. So thanks for joining us. Ryan Straschnitzki started his life on skates at the age of 4 with Learn to Skate, and I was shocked by this one, protesting all the way. So I imagine your parents were definitely pushing you a little bit on those skates. Eventually, he grew a love for the ice, and Ryan has inspired the nation following the 2018 Humboldt Broncos bus crash. Ryan has maintained his resiliency and hard work to continue his progress both on and off the ice. While he is paralyzed from this tragic accident, he continues to amaze everyone with his progress and positive attitude. He is currently working hard on achieving his goal of becoming a para player, which we'll talk about in just a little while. So thank you, Ryan, and welcome. Tyler Smith is a mental health advocate and aspiring public speaker. He's traveled extensively talking about this subject. Tyler is also a Humboldt Broncos alumni. He's involved in the 2018 collision that killed 16 members of the junior hockey team. Tyler sustained many physical injuries, but as so many who experience trauma, the most severe injuries are not visible. Still, Tyler was able to return to the game of hockey, first coaching with a midget team in Leduc before eventually returning to the Humboldt Broncos in November 2018. He played 10 games with the team before stepping away in order to prioritize his own healing. He is currently attending the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, where he is a student in the school's radio and television program. He had a class at 8 o'clock this morning, so thank you, Tyler, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we're going to start right off. I'm going to start with Sheldon. You have fought for safety, security, the mental well-being of so many, not just adults, for people in sport. But where are we in overcoming that the stigma of the mental health side? Are we where we need to be? We've come so far, but
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be with Tyler and Ryan and Ryan and yourself, Catriona. And it's an honor to be in this Canada Sports Hall of Fame, and never would have thunk that Sheldon would have been part of this one day, let me tell you. But, you know, I mean, my opinion is that, you know, I mean, when I told my story in 96, you know, we didn't talk about any of these issues. We didn't talk about mental illness, mental health. We didn't talk about bullying. We didn't talk about abuse. I mean, addiction was to go dry out. I mean, we didn't connect the dots. And I think, you know, for a long time, we told the story to raise awareness, but we talked about the incidences. And I think where we're at now and what's happening is we're really understanding more clearly about the impact. And to me, the impact is what are the scars that last a lifetime. There's a lot more science now around these issues, right? Our knowledge of trauma, the connection of trauma to behavior is huge. I don't think that there will ever be an end game in this conversation and in this work. I think what I know is that what's made sense for me over the years is that clearly it's become clear why I've become the way I've become, or why I did the things that I did that I was so shameful of. You know, it kind of laid out my path, you know, and it took away some of the shame and the guilt. But I hope and I believe we need to keep learning about this. And I think we need to really keep focusing on simplifying our knowledge of these issues, because they already bring with them a bundle of fear and anxiety and stress, even to bring the word up. We don't know how to even start with that conversation. So I think that our job continually needs to be to simplify and clearly make this conversation, you know, a lot more fact-based and knowledge-based.
And we're going to talk more about that later on, just about sort of the understanding of the communication. And I think that's what you're talking about. I mean, in '96, and I'll ask you later again. I mean, really, you were sort of a lone voice, and finally now we're having conversations like this, and this is why, just so everybody knows, this is why this panel agreed to come here and give their time, because we want to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And but you know, you were and you continue to be such an example for that, and so that we appreciate. Everybody does, and everybody who's been involved in sport. I mean, I love your saying with the respect group, you polish the good apples.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's focusing on what we can focus on, and there is greatness, and it's polishing the good apples.
And it's hope, right? We need to show people a way out, that there is a way out. There's a way to be healthy and happy, and and there's great tools, as Ryan, I know we'll talk about. And, you know, I mean, there's great tools today, but, you know, what I learned is that I can't wait around for somebody to save Sheldon. There's people that can guide me and give me things like tools that I can work on, but it has to be my actions that make the change. And that is something that I've learned and that stick with me today. I mean, nobody's going to fix Sheldon unless Sheldon takes, you know, the bull by the horn and start doing the work. I have to do the work.
So Tyler, I'm going to ask you, you know, in the intro, I talked about you going back and playing. So physical injuries healed to a certain point. So how difficult was it for you? You know, Sheldon says Sheldon needs to fix Sheldon. For you to admit, and not just to you, but publicly, that there were injuries that people could not see.
Yeah, so I think that was the biggest thing that I struggled with. Obviously, coming back to Humboldt, I was just like so devoted to getting my physical self back to normal and back to being able to play junior hockey that I just like completely blindsided my mental health. Like coming in, I knew I was like, I'm going to go to that same dressing room. I'm going to go to that same billet house. I'm going to go to that same arena. Everything's going to be the same, but unfortunately, there's just going to be unfamiliar faces. So I knew coming in, but I just don't think I prepared for it. And then obviously playing those 10 games, I can look back and be proud of myself, but I think it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, just because of the fact that I was able to obviously prove to myself that I could play junior hockey again. But then again, I was able to take a step back and realize, okay, like you can play hockey again, but also this is your life to live. And if you're not going to take priority on your mental health and put that into fruition, then I mean, you're just going to go down a downhill spiral. Like I'll never forget it. People were sensing that I was off, and I'll never forget my billet mom was like, okay, but if you go home, you need to promise me that you're going to do something about it. And I was like, up until then, I was just like, yeah, I'll do something about it. It'll come. Like I'll write in a journal here and there. And I never really took initiative, but that just resonated with me because I was like, somebody who cares about me obviously sees that I'm off and I need to do something about it. So I held that promise, and obviously now here we are today.
So question on that, because I think sometimes people can see it. So did you kind of figure it out first, or was it somebody's words that kind of really made it click and said, yeah, I'm not okay?
So we went on a and I got off the bus and I texted my parents and I was like, I'm not having fun anymore. So I did realize it, but I think I had to make a couple phone calls that next day to be able to kind of realize that this is what I needed to do. Like I made a couple phone calls to some influential people, and I was like, the biggest thing I was struggling with is am I letting people down? Am I letting everybody down? Am I letting everybody from the 29 families down? Am I letting my angels down? And I think everybody that I talked to, they just said, like, this is your life. Like, you need to make the decisions that's going to benefit you and make you happy, and we'll support you no matter what. So I did realize it, but I think I needed that extra push, and I needed that extra little oomph to actually get me going and actually get me in the right direction and the place where I needed to be, which was back home.
So Ryan, where Tyler's talking about his injuries were not visible, your injuries are, and yet have you chosen to have it that public within the world of sport, media, around our country, around the world? How difficult has it been that everybody's sort of watching every part of your progress, or has that been a bit of a motivator?
It's kind of a mix of emotions, I guess. When everyone's watching you and you get a lot of messages from people saying you're an inspiration, you're helping me get through these things and get through hard times. My kids look up to you. It's like, that motivates you to do better. But at the same time, some people are like, oh, like, when are you going to start walking again? Or like, we don't know the future, right? So it's like, I'm like, I don't know, but I can do my best. I can, work on my physical health as much as I can. I can go, do the next best surgery that will, help me get to the next step towards walking. So again, it's a mix of emotions. I mean, people always want the best for you, and I love that. It's motivating. But at the same time, I think for myself, I want to prove to myself that I'm more than just a wheelchair, right? Like, when I go to physio each time, it's like pushing myself past my limit, making a new personal record, right? So each time I go in about 3 times a week, right, it's like, okay, what am I going to do today to get, to that next step? And as far as sports go, I mean, I set a lofty goal for myself making the Paralympics, right? But, in the end, you never know what the future is going to hold, right? So for me, it was about obviously just putting in the work now and seeing where it takes me. But to have that all that attention on me, it can be stressful at times. But at the same time, I just, turn to my friends and, look at myself in the mirror and, say, why am I doing this, right? It's to inspire people. It's to push people to keep going forward and let them know that no matter what, the road's never over. So continually pushing myself and using that as motivation is key in my life.
And you won't have seen it, but I mean, even you being at the Airdrie Alberta Winter Games, my daughter was there for ringette, and you don't always hear the stories, but for you to be there and to have been part of that opening ceremony was so great for so many of the athletes. So the media part, it's tough, and in today's world, everybody's connected through social media, which is sometimes great and sometimes not great. But there are so many times that you don't see things. So you guys do a lot that you don't hear about, but that we see, which is pretty amazing. Now, Ryan, you said Ryan number 2. You said you'd take the number 2. You said Straz could have number 1. Okay. So can you tell everybody a little bit about headversity, sponsoring this event? Digital device, a way of helping people, but how does it work? How do you connect with not just sport groups, but organizations as well?
Love to. Came from, because that's an important part of this whole story. Psychiatrist for a decade, just over a decade, amazing hospital, and I literally had a 6-day and I have a passion from the workplace. A lot of people who, if they have, we're having some technical issues here.
Make sure the sound is
Does my
better.
sound okay?
Perfect.
Okay. And so a lot of folks who were having issues really just needed a tool. They needed something to help them build that resilience before they needed to come see somebody like me. So that's why we designed Headversity. So what it is, it's a digital tool. It's a mobile application that we roll out to athlete groups for large sport organizations, to employee groups for large companies across North America. And who we're really trying to target is, honestly, the young Sheldon Kennedys who wanted to take mental health into their own hands. Somebody who would rather, be given the tools than reach out, because we know those are high-risk individuals, especially athletes who are doers, they're fixers, they're athletes. So they would rather use a tool that's private and confidential, that's evidence-based, and that's engaging, aside from reaching out. So we've designed something that can help a lot of young athletes. And for all of our users, we're finding really good traction amongst athletes because they want to engage, they want to help themselves.
So it's organizations, large sport groups, but as you were saying earlier, so everybody has their own app though, right? And it's not a shared thing, it's individual?
It is, yeah, it's
Okay.
personalized. So we did a lot of research
yeah.
with top resilience researchers across Canada. And what we were able to find was that people want to score. They want to know where they are at in those 6 resilience skills. They want to know how mindful they are. They want to know how mentally healthy they are, how hardy they are. What is their mental fitness level? So you do a quick survey as soon as you get into the tool, and then you're given a score in your 6 resilience skills. And then the app really personalizes your resilience journey. So if you're low in mindfulness, you will see more content and more tools in mindfulness. If you're low on energy management or mental fitness, the app is pushing you toward doing that. So continually boosting those skills where you need the most help.
And giving you the direction on how to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. You're talking about people being afraid to reach out, which I think is one of the biggest things, so that the help is coming to them. This question is for you two. When you were just after the crash, not everybody is going to reach out in certain situations of trauma and stress, but yet you had the support group of people coming to you, people like Sheldon. How important was it for you guys to know and to see and to witness all these people coming to you saying, we understand trauma, we understand that, and we're here. Can you talk a little bit about that and about
Straschnitzki, you want to take it away?
Yeah, I think the attention right away was just, it was amazing to see, the world come together for us. I mean, there's no other words to describe it other than, it was just amazing and again, motivational. All these people that had either similar experiences or whatever the case was, and they came to chat. They took time out of their day to talk to you or come visit, and it was amazing. I mean, I've met a ton of great people, and a lot of them have been people in wheelchairs, for example. I met Rick Hansen and a para water skier named Nolan Barnes, who works with a teammate of ours, Jacob Wasserman, and just guys like that who kind of share their story and say, it's going to get better, right? And, you kind of trust them and you kind of make a bond that way and believe them and start having faith that, things will get better. And again, it was just amazing to see the support from around the world, and it was really uplifting. And I definitely think it helped in the recovery process for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, straight to Straz's point, I think right away the support was absolutely mind-blowing. It was just incredible. And I think for me personally, that was one of the biggest learning experiences, just because I didn't know what to do with it. And I think I was just, obviously we were very young. We were all pretty much almost teenagers or like young adults. So I didn't really know how to approach it. And I think looking back now, I can be like, okay, now looking back, I probably should have taken those outlets earlier on. Say Sheldon, say a couple other people that had been through trauma experiences like that. And I think I just sat there on my couch and just kind of let everything boil up. And I think looking back, I had all this support and I had everybody wanting to help, and I had everybody in this position who were like, I'm a phone call away. And I think I was just so stubborn to that. And I think I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go to physio every day and I'm just do everything. I don't need help for that first little bit. I can just rely on my family. And I think now looking back, I'm just like, why? Why did you do that? But I think that's one thing that I try to put out in my speeches is just take that, use those tools, use those resources. Why wouldn't you? People are offering these resources. People are offering help. And I mean, I think I was just so blindsided to the fact that everybody wanted to help, but I thought I was just I can do this myself. I can handle this. I can just, I can just do this. But now looking back, like I said, I recommend that people from the start use those resources. And I mean, we had the support of all of Canada. So I don't know why I didn't, but it's
because you're an athlete and maybe a little stubborn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So. Sheldon, you said when you first started talking in '96, I would call you a lone voice, because people weren't listening to the voice of the athlete or the voice of somebody who said, I'm hurting. And to me, it's really only been quite recent that we've started to listen to that voice. How, you hear from these guys just how much the support of everybody, how much it meant. You still have to take that initiative, but how did you keep going? I mean, it was years of fighting, and I don't know if fighting's the right word.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's, the people kept me going. I think when you're stuck in when you're stuck in depression and you're stuck in addiction and you're stuck in self-loathing and you're stuck in, mental health issues and all those struggles, you think you're alone, and you think that you're the only one that struggles with this stuff. And when I told my story, I mean, I realized quickly, and especially with sexual abuse, you realize quickly that you're not the only one. And we were, hundreds of thousands of people over the years that have written letters. And I mean, it was unreal. Like, and one thing that really hit me is that the incidences were different, but the impacts were the same. The outcomes were the same. So, and I just want to go back to, like, I think, also, I mean, just so proud of Tyler and Ryan, like seeing them here and having them speak about their tragedy, like the terrible accident that they were in, the way that you speak about it. I mean, we were on a bus accident and 4 of our teammates died back in 1986. And I mean, it was like pick up a 66 of vodka and drink our sorrows away for 2 weeks. And then we get back and playing. And, but I can tell you, I see and I know some of my teammates from that time, and it's very impactful. That impacted them. They're still dealing with that stuff. And it's just so great to see, and I think that we can't have shame and guilt around not, reaching out sooner. You reach out when you're ready to reach out. And I mean, and that's one thing that I've learned, and I don't think this is about perfect. I really think that, the way we get through, is about practice. I mean, I think going back to your point, when I told my story, I had no clue how to talk about this stuff, but we practice to get better. As an athlete, that's what I know, right? I've practiced to, to learn how to share my feelings, learn how to understand where I'm at. And that takes time. And I think that, there's this expectation that I go see Dr. Todd twice and I'm good to go, right? Oof, right? Hey, big But I mean, the reality is that, what this is to me, I've had to accept the fact that, I can't fix anybody. And people can't fix Sheldon, but what I can do is I can show up for people, I can listen, and I can get them to the places, to the professionals where they need the help. And it's about, practice, not perfection in my world. We got to just keep practicing, keep getting better at it on a daily basis. And, find 2 or 3 things every day to set yourself up for success. Some days are better than others. My life used to be top of the mountain, the bottom of the ocean. And I want to kind of stay in those Saskatchewan rolling hills. Everybody thinks it's flat, right? But that's kind of what I try to do. Mm-hmm. But the lone voice, I don't know. There was lots of voices. We just didn't hear them. And I think now we've really got a lot of people talking and it's awesome. And I think our biggest thing is to be consistent in our language and our approach. And it brings some, confidence around these issues for individuals when we can build a type of knowledge base that allows us to have simple tools to take action around.
When you talk about trying to be perfect, I mean, I think, we have a panel here, probably pretty high achievers, and it's hard when you realize that nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
And that you can't even perform perfectly because it doesn't exist. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask you because, Sheldon talks about the, getting those tools, but what about when people know that people are struggling? I mean, just like Tyler's billet mom, and you can see people struggling, and you probably sometimes often know that you're struggling, but people don't want to get that help yet. I mean, they're not ready. Because I think that's one of the biggest questions people have is how if you push somebody, there are certain personalities, and I'd be one of them. You try to push me, I go the opposite way. So what are some of the strategies in those situations that we might witness and these guys might see amongst even teammates?
Yeah, I do agree that sometimes the harder you push, the more resistance you're going to get. And I like what everyone's talking about in terms of listening and being empathic and validating. One of the most important things I learned in all my years of training is providing validating statements. And so if somebody is reaching out to you or you're reaching out to someone to validate that what they're experiencing is real and that they are suffering and help is available if they would like it, is one of the most therapeutic and important things that I learned in training. To tell someone, you know, it seems like you're really suffering and I'm sorry to hear that that's the situation, is a very powerful thing to say to someone. The thing that can work against that sometimes is when we are trying to play Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It and trying to push someone toward care, and saying to someone, have you tried this or have you looked at that, can actually be invalidating at times. So to provide that support, create that time to have the conversation, but then attend to the conversation without rushing to fix it is very effective. And validating that that individual is going through something that's very difficult is a highly therapeutic, highly effective strategy.
So just on that, you know, a lot of people who are part of the audience might be parents, and especially in this time, it's a time of unknown, it's a time of uncertainty. So they're stressed. Kids feel that. So, I mean, any tools on dealing with that, whether it's from the child side, from a parent, or even a parent trying to express that, you know, I'm pretty open with my kids, so they know, but I'm pretty emotional too. They know when I'm upset, they know I'm stressed. Well, they often say, well, you cry when you're happy, sad, mad, angry. I'm like, yeah, pretty much everything. But tools in that, because that's the hardest thing, is to try to protect the people around you that you love.
Sure. And I think a lot of people, we try and protect our kids, and young people are very smart and they pick up on those emotional cues like we all do. And so to be authentic and present and lay it on the table, I think is the most important thing. We all know that we're going through a global pandemic and that mental health issues are on the rise. Anxiety amongst young students is on the rise. Everyone knows that. So to protect and hide that and not have that frank, authentic conversation is a detriment. So I encourage parents to have those tough conversations about emotions, about crying, and do it without shame or guilt. Just be open about it, because as soon as you introduce a shame or guilt element, that's when young people shut down. And that's when they don't want to talk, which is the worst outcome out of all of this.
Well, and I think that's where, I mean, Sheldon, you mentioned it. We're listening to the voices more, right? It's not just one person. We are saying, let's have this conversation. So I love that about talking about it, put it out there, and nobody is perfect. Everybody's struggling, and I think that's okay to admit. We've talked, and in the intro of the panel, we talked about resilience. And so I looked up the definition of resilience, and simple but powerful. It's a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, or even significant stress. And Tyler, you mentioned about the public speaking side, and you've been doing a lot of public speaking. You talk about mental health, you talk about resilience. How did this sort of evolve? And can you tell us some highlights of organizations you've talked to, but also what you were getting from that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think for the first bit, I had no idea that this would eventually be my kind of outlet, but I remember once I got back from Humboldt, I got back home, I started kind of healing myself, and a platform called Unsinkable came to me. Silken Lawman used to be an Olympian, she started this platform, and she said, I just want you to write a story about yourself, or like write your story. And I was like, okay, I can do that. Like, that's no problem. Like, I'm a decent writer. Like, so I put together, I think it was like a 5-page little story about for pretty much from right before the accident to now. And she released it, and I got so much support and messages of inspiration from it. And I kind of had to take a step back, because I was like, okay, like, this is something that I could possibly do. I was like, I couldn't believe that my words would actually be able to help people find hope in their journeys. So after that, I think the first one I did, I went to I think Midget A provincial championship in Whitecourt. And I spoke at the opening ceremony, and I got up there and I was like, whoa, like, this is my first time actually speaking. I think there was 8 teams and then like probably 500 people in the crowd. And I look up and I'm like, really? Like, am I ready for this? Like, at that point, I was pretty much just reading from a paper, so it wasn't that hard. But I remember after it, I got a standing ovation, and then I got people coming up to me in the lobby after and like talking about me. I had parents come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you're inspiring me. Like, thank you so much." And I was like, "What is going on?" Like, I'm just like sharing my story. Like, I was trying to make people laugh in the crowd, and obviously I had some sad moments in the speech, rightfully so. But and then ever since that, I've been fortunate enough to speak to a division in the military. I spoke with Theo Fleury. Well, he was the keynote speaker, and then I was the speaker right before at a men's mental health night in Westlock. And a couple other, I did a high school and little things like that. And ever since then, I mean, I just can't believe like the response from it. I just can't believe that my story is actually going to help people's journeys through their trauma. And I think that's the one thing I always try to reiterate in my speeches is that we all have a story, but I never try to compare my story to somebody else's. Like my story doesn't mean more than somebody else's story. At the end of the day, we all go through trauma and everyone's growth looks differently. So I try to reiterate that in my speeches and I mean, I'm still learning. I'm still learning about mental health. I'm not an expert at all. But I've been through it, and I want to be able to help share that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I mean, the thing is, it's an everyday journey. Like Sheldon said, like I expected right before I went to see my therapist, I was like, I'm going to do 1 or 2 sessions, be good. I'll be fine, like no problem at all. But now I see like it's a journey, and it's an everyday thing. You wake up on your bad days, and I had to learn to embrace those as well. And I try and say that in my speeches because before the accident, like I was a happy-go-lucky, selfless kid. I was that dressing room guy. I was that glue guy. So I tried to make people laugh, even in the classroom, everything. Like I just never put myself first. And now that I actually was able to put myself first, I was able to help others with that as well. So I think that was a big thing. That was kind of my epiphany about the fact that I can be an advocate for mental health and also help people in my journey too. So,
well, and I think, you know, it's very powerful to understand that everybody's journey is different. I had somebody say to me once when I was going through a really hard time, don't compare tragedies. And you sometimes think something that's bothering me, I don't want to tell anybody because they're going through so much more. And it was just very powerful because I think everybody's tragedy is tragic for them. And are you continuing to do more of that? I mean, it's probably difficult now with the, not just the pandemic, but with the school side. But do you find that there's still a ton of requests? And how do you even sort of say, okay, I have school, but I want to help, you know, that's prioritizing that?
Yeah, it's a big learning experience for me because obviously I still want to be able to finish my schooling. I still want to be able to kind of do the fun things. Like, I mean, I'm still a kid, but I've definitely learned that this pandemic has put kind of a halt to the whole, obviously we're not going to go to a big auditorium and speak in front of 1,000 people, but I think even a little like selfie video message that gets out there to a youth platform, I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, it can help. And I think that's the biggest thing that I need to realize. Like I was on this high of speaking in front of groups, and I was on this high of speaking in front of big high schools and everything, but I now know that, I mean, even sending or doing a little speech in front of a hockey team or a more like socially distanced speech or online or whatever it may be, it still helps. And I mean, it still helps in my journey because I mean, that's my outlet now. And that's a thing I rely on to help me kind of get through and help my healing and recovery. So if I can speak to obviously a smaller crowd or just target a more like smaller audience of youth or whatever it may be, then I mean, I can't stop that. I can't let the pandemic and all the restrictions kind of discourage me from the fact that this is still helping people.
You talk about outlet, Ryan. I want to ask you, I mean, sport took so much from you, and yet you still commit your life to sport and with the goal of the Paralympics and being on the ice with the para ice hockey team. So how much of that is your outlet of healing, and how much has that goal driven you?
Yeah, I mean, sports have been a part of my life, like from the get-go, right? And it's given so much to me. I mean, communication through people, coaches. I mean, they're still in my life, and I can still always reach out to them no matter what. And I think the experiences that I've had and the experiences that I'm going to have in the future, I think sport has always given me you know, the feeling of joy and fun, and it kind of gives you a release from everything else. You don't really think about anything else. So, I mean, when the accident happened and I knew the extent of my injuries and I went back on the ice, you know, 4 months later, it was like time didn't exist and I was just playing hockey again. I didn't think about the different situation I was in. So again, yeah, sport has given so much to me, and that's all I want to do is give back, right? Because it's given so much to me. So, any opportunity that I get to get other people in sleds or get, little kids playing sports who, might not have the funds. I mean, just recently, I'm sponsored by Warrior and they had some gear to give away. So, I figured I could give it to people who, because hockey's an expensive sport, right? So I gave it away to some little kids who are, starting up hockey, and kind of give them, that joy of being on the ice with friends and making new opportunities from that through teammates, coaches, whatever the case. So I think giving back, because it's given so much to me, is just so important. And again, through sledge hockey, I mean, I don't really realize that I'm in a sled, right? It's just, you're on the ice, you're with a new group, a new teammate, and you're just out there having fun. So again, yeah, sport has just given so much to me, and I just want to give back.
And you talk about sport and the joy of it. Sheldon, we just talked about it before also. In hockey, if you look back, I mean, there was obviously joy, but there's also trauma. But talk about having a bit of a different perspective. You had the opportunity to go and battle the Blades, and that's what we're talking about. I mean, different skates, different situation, and yet again, sometimes it's that change of perspective of being on ice, and it's different, but it's same. And talk about the joy side of just being able mentally to be able to do something different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, I think the journey around mental health, mental illness, whatever we're struggling with, I mean, to me, it was like, I need to do whatever I can do to start laughing and smiling and enjoying things again, enjoying life. And sport was no different. I carried a ton of shame and guilt around not performing at my best. Like, yes, I played in the NHL, but I mean, I never lifted a weight or rode a bike. I mean, my whole NHL career was basically treatment centers, psych wards, right? Some time in jail. And, that was what Sheldon was known for, this wild child, this drunk. And, and I look at my small town where I grew up, and, they were so proud that Sheldon's in the NHL. Meanwhile, this is what they're reading in the papers. This is who I was. And it was not who I was, but that's the way I was living because of what happened to me. And, so it took me a long time one of the biggest regrets I had was not giving myself the best ability to be the best I could. And I think that's really what sport's about. And the love of the game was stolen from me. I basically played because I didn't know how to say that I wanted to quit, because I wasn't ready to answer all these questions. I didn't know how to answer these questions. And so Battle of the Blades, I mean, I probably put on skates maybe 15 times in the last 22 years. And I got a call. I was out on the tractor in Saskatchewan putting in the crop, and Ron McLean called me. He's like, Sheldon, he says, why don't you come on to Battle of the Blades? I said, Ron, that I'm good. Like, I'm trying to take a step back here. Right. And he says, yeah, but it's going to be fun. And you know what, when he said that, it hit me. Like it hit me. It's like, you know what, I'm going to go have some fun. And I think that it was probably one of the best journeys that I've been on, because you know what it did? Yes, it was a different context, but it gave me the opportunity to train, to prepare, to be at my best, and to smile and to have fun on the ice, because that's not how I remembered it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't wait. I know I was laying in the hospital with a broken femur in 9 places, and got the call that, Boston's not renewing my contract. And I'm thinking, thank God I'm out of here, right? Like, I'm done. And, that's my way out. And it shouldn't be that way, right? So anyway, it was a gift to go back. And I think, the message that I think the message that is being told here today is that there is a way out. There is a way to smile again. There is a way to feel good about waking up in the morning. And because for most of my life, I didn't want to wake up in the morning. And when I was awake, I wanted to numb myself out so I didn't have to participate in the day. And just, that's not fun. And I know that there's a lot of people in that space. And I think, you know, the best gift that we could bring with Battle of the Blades and the message, Caitlin Weaver and I, was hope, right? That there's a way out and that you can have fun and you can smile again. And you know, and I guess I just think this is, you know, for you having this conversation, Catriona, like, you know, with your status in our country and your ability to ask these questions and just have these frank conversations, to me, this is what it's about. Mm-hmm. This is what it's about, right? There is no perfectness around this. Like, this is about having conversations, being vulnerable, right?
That's difficult, though.
It's difficult.
So then, Ryan, I'm going to turn this to you, but then if you guys want to comment on this, because it leads me to a question, because I mean, if you look at status, we're a country that embraces sport, right? And what's great is we don't put, I mean, maybe we put hockey sort of above other things, but even being Olympians, right? You're just part of the normal world. And yet, and probably harder now with social media, you were expected to have your stuff together. Yeah. And so none of us do. And when you have a certain way and people look to you, for example, sometimes you feel like you can't have a crappy day and you can't be down and you can't question everything. And I get that. And I say that from experience. I mean, I'm vulnerable around my kids, but there are probably most people that I'm not vulnerable around. So how do you get past that, right? I mean, having your story being told, people maybe turn to you and go, oh, it's great, you know, that you can be vulnerable and knowing your guys' story, you can be vulnerable. But I think there's so many people who are in a certain position where people don't expect them to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And so as a psychologist, how do you deal with that? And then I open it up to you guys about, you know, how difficult that is sometimes.
We've seen a bit of a shift there where ideas around mental strength were equivocal to not having weakness. And mental strength is something in sport that you hear everywhere. It's ubiquitous. How mentally strong is he or she? Are they mentally weak? And the narrative has changed, I think, dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years, where you can still be amazing at your sport. You can be a top performing athlete and you can still have depression. Those two things are not necessarily mutually exclusive or inclusive. You can have a mental health issue and still be a top performing athlete. So we've had athletes like Michael Phelps, who's one of the greatest athletes of our generation, talk about depression, talk about ADHD. And I think sport provides the perfect palette to destigmatize mental health. Why? Because we have these people that we put on a pedestal. And if we allow them to be authentic and not perfect and real, then everyone can be real and everyone can be imperfect. And that's really why I got into this, is because you know, I made a documentary on this very topic about concussion and mental health and athletes. And we interviewed some of the greatest hockey players of all time, and they had concussion issues and pursuant depression and substance issues after that. And why I loved creating that film is because we were getting in the living rooms of these, you know, gods, for lack of a better term, and they were being very real with us about their emotional experience. And I thought that making that film for me was, you know, destigmatizing mental health. So I believe strongly that sport needs to be the platform to have this message, and athletes need to be the ones who step up and create that space for authenticity and being real and imperfect.
When I raced, I wore dark glasses, and going to Salt Lake, everybody expected me to win. People thought, oh, you wear the dark glasses because you look so intimidating. It was actually so people couldn't see the fear in my eyes. And I just started talking about that because that was the reality, but I was never going to tell anybody back then. Do you guys have a comment on?
Yeah, like, I mean, I think for me, after the accident, it's kind of opposite to you. I think I had a hard time having a good day because to our extent of like the accident and to the high degree of the accident, I think it was almost hard for me to be like, hey, like go have some fun, like you can have a laugh, like it's okay. But like people are always like coming up to you and be like, how are you doing? Like, are you doing okay? Because like everybody kind of expects you to just kind of sulk and like sit there. And that's what I just did. I was like, yeah, you know what, like why would I go out there and like have some fun, go have a drink with some friends or something like that. So for those first couple months, like I had no problem just kind of sitting there and just being like, you know what, like I can be, like I'm just going to be sad today. Like that's no problem at all. Like why do I need to go and out have a good day? But then after I came home from Humboldt, I had the opportunity to play with the junior B team in Leduc. Like all of my good buddies growing up, like this was kind of the perfect opportunity. And I struggled with kind of making that decision to go back just because like the thought of just like going out and having fun again. But then, I mean, my first game, I remember my mom telling me, she's like, it was like so refreshing to just like see the smile on your face, like playing hockey again. She was like in between whistles, like I was like bopping to the music and I was just like, it was just like refreshing again. It was like, I can go out and have fun. And I mean, for the first bit, I know like Straz can attest to this. I think we were like under a microscope. And I mean, with social media, like everything we did was almost under a microscope. And like, it was like, sometimes you almost felt bad, like kind of putting on a smile and like having a good time just because like this just happened. And like this, like, I mean, obviously we struggle with it every day and we will for the rest of our lives. But I think what I had to come to terms was with the fact that we can have fun still. Like we can go out and have some laughs. And I mean, I had to learn to gain that kind of almost feeling back in me. And I mean, I know from the 29 families, like every family we talk to, like they want us to have fun. And I mean, they want us to go out and be ourselves. We're still kids, like we can go have fun. And I think that was a hard thing for me personally, at least to grasp and to kind of get back to.
Like Smitty said, I mean, you want to go out there and have fun, but I mean, with the wheelchair, it's pretty recognizable. I mean, when you're with a group of teens and everyone starts to recognize you, I mean, everywhere you go, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry. Like everyone's just, they feel the need to be sorry for me. And I'm like, right away, I'm like, okay, well, I don't feel sorry for myself. You know what? This is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to work towards. I'm not going to think about anything else. So when they come up to you and they, you know, they get down and they put their hand on your shoulder and like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. And they feel bad for you. It just kind of ruins the mood, right? I'm like, I'm not trying to think about that, but I mean, it is nice. And I know where they're coming from because sometimes you don't know how to interact with people in wheelchairs or with disabilities, right? So I think the biggest thing for me was just, again, hanging around friends and getting involved in the adaptive sports world because everyone has a disability, but nobody sees the disability. You're just, you know, a regular person. So, I mean, going into the dressing room for the first time for sled hockey, I mean, you see guys taking off their legs or, you know, transferring from their wheelchair into the bench or whatever the case, right? And, you know, they're just having normal conversations, like nothing's different, right? So, again, like Smitty said, you're just trying to have fun. And when people, you know, feel the need to be sorry for you or they tell you that they're sorry for you, it just kind of ruins the mood. And you know, for me, overcoming that was again through sport and again not thinking about it, waking up every day and thinking, okay, this is what I got to do today to keep your mind off, you know, the negative stuff. And again, like you said, right away we were under a microscope. So I mean, one of the first titles that came out on a news article about me was plans to play sledge hockey, win a gold medal, make Team Canada, right? Like that was set in stone, I guess, in the articles. And again, right away, I was under a lot of drugs and I don't really remember some of those interviews, but, you know, I kind of, obviously it's the goal that I want to do, but at the same time, it's like people expect that from you. And again, like I said, you never know what's going to happen in the future. So all you can do is, you know, work today and work towards that. But again, you're just trying to have fun. And sometimes when people set goals for you and you don't set them yourself can be kind of a setback and you know, you have to adapt and make new goals for yourself to, you know, get where you want to be.
So we've just talked before we started this panel. Ryan and I were talking about, if people haven't watched Rising Phoenix, documentary on Netflix about the power of the Paralympic movement. It's absolutely incredible. And you talk about, you know, people taking off their leg. There was the one girl going down the water slide. Her legs come down first.
Yeah.
She's going to grab her legs. And Sheldon, again, this is open. Sheldon, I'll start with you. I think what Tyler was talking about is a bit of the guilt, right?
Yeah.
The feeling of guilt. But right now, you know, if we look even at other documentaries, there's Athlete A talking about negative parts of sport, whether it's physical injuries, whether it's abuse side, whether it's corruption. We get at Sport Calgary a lot of questions right now in the pandemic. Parents saying, is it worth it? Like, do I put my kid in sport? And kids going, oh, I'm nervous, the health-wise. When we look at, you know, a lot of things that have happened in sport, my question to all of you, though, and because we talk about a lot of the physical, the emotional, the social benefits, is sport worth it?
Well, absolutely, sport's worth it. I mean, we know that one of our best tools for exercise or for mental health is exercise and belonging, right? And I think sport offers both. But I mean, I was just I'm part of this International Olympic Committee research project, and I was on a call with Rachel Dellen Haller, one of the first athlete one of the first gymnasts that came on. I know I'm not pronouncing her last name correctly, but it was just incredible to hear her speak. And I think, and we both share the same type of message. And I was listening to Ryan and I was listening to Tyler speak, and I kept thinking about, what a platform. And I think you brought it up, Ryan, but what a platform it is to bring to light and to show a path forward through difficult social issues that face us. I mean, sport has been doing that for years, right? For years and years and years. And I think, I look at, if Sheldon Kennedy didn't have hockey as a platform, even though, I had a lot of shame and guilt around it, hockey still gave me that elevated platform to be able to make change and to be able to get stories told and to be able to shape the way that we had these types of conversations. I think that we're in a position today, about being vulnerable. I think that, vulnerability, I think is our absolute key to growth. And, we don't have to be sick to be vulnerable, but yet I do believe we have to be vulnerable to grow. And I think that, where the issues sit today is we need focus, right? We got a lot of people saying we got to talk. Let's talk, right? A lot of our systems aren't in a position to receive those calls. I think that, as a group, and I think sport can bring this, is we need a focus, right? We need a clear focus around these issues. To me, I have a 24-year-old daughter who, I know sport was a huge benefit in her life, and her watching her dad go through, his struggles, right? She watched her dad go to treatment centers and watched her dad just grinding it out to try to get healthy, to be the best dad that I can, still impacted her big time, right? She's doing a lot better today, and sport helped her do that. I have a young son too, who's going to be involved in sport. And I think that, when I look at sport, I think that sport has a lot of the tools that we're looking for to use to become healthy in our daily lives, to help with, the struggles that we may be struggling with. So I think it's a critical piece of our communities and our infrastructure as we move forward.
Ryan, do you have a comment on it?
I guess I echo a lot of that. I'm a believer in sport, obviously. Like if we're looking at the science behind it, it's unequivocal that exercise, diet, sleep, community, these are things that are cornerstones to our mental health. And those things are also cornerstones to having any success in athletics. And so I believe in it from a purely medical standpoint. I think sport is very important, especially for young people. Gives them a sense of team, gives them a sense of responsibility, loyalty to something greater than themselves. And that's why I love working with athletes who've had concussion or who've had depression or substance issues, because they have a basis from which you can build. And I think sport gives you that in addition to all the physical and mental benefits. I think there's a lot of insight and self-expertise and mindfulness, all these resilient skills that we talk about. That's what sport teaches you, which is why we love working with sport organizations.
Mm-hmm. And, when we look at how sport can impact on that inclusion side, and we look at new Canadians in our community, and we look at LGBTQ, just the inclusion side, especially Ryan, you've witnessed that, right? When we talk about is sport worth it, it's what drives you, hey?
Yeah, again, sports have been a part of my life, from the get-go, and it's given me so many opportunities, taught me so many life lessons, and I believe that if I didn't play sports growing up and I was in the same position I am in now, I don't think I'd be positive. I don't think I'd be playing any sports now. I think I'd be sitting at home feeling sorry for myself, not doing anything about it. So It gave me a lot of life lessons, like a lot of communication through teammates, past coaches, whatever the case. And it's just been absolutely so giving to me, and I'm very grateful for it. And I'm excited to have more experiences coming up in the future. So again, I think sport is definitely worth it. You get a lot of benefits out of it, both physically and mentally.
And you're talking Beijing 2022.
Yeah.
Tyler?
Yeah, exact same for me. I mean, I've played hockey since I was 5, lacrosse since I was 8, golf since I was 4. Like, sports just been a part of my life from the get-go. And I think the biggest thing for me has just been like the team atmosphere. And I think that's what I always thrived for, and that's what I always kind of longed for. So I think Straz will remember this. In the Humboldt year, this was kind of like my first kind of experience with mental health. So obviously being a dressing room guy, like, you have to always be on. Like, you just have to, you got to come into the room every day and know that, like, you got to be on. And I think, I mean, I was a fourth line guy in Humboldt. So, I mean, playing 4 minutes a night and then having to continually come into the dressing room and be like, hey, boys, like, this is it, like, make people laugh. And I think it was kind of taking a toll on me. And Strasser might remember, like I said, there was a window, I can't remember when it was exactly, but I kind of went mute for like 4 days. And I came to the dressing room and I was just like, I wasn't myself. And I was just going to like kind of see, I was like, do I need to be here anymore? Like, do they need me? Like, I mean, I'm a fourth line guy. I don't really offer much on the ice. Like, and then during those 4 days, I mean, I remember our captain Shotzi and Fisker and all the boys, they continually came up to me and were like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And I was like, oh, nothing, don't worry about it. Like, it's all good. And then I would just go home and I would sulk for those 4 days. And then I kind of had that like wake up call again. I was like, okay, like, these people like care about me. Like, these people actually like want me to be on the team. And I remember Shotzi was like, I'll go to Darcy. Like, I'll get you more playing time. Like, I'll get you on the penalty kill. And I mean, obviously, like, it was super refreshing because I did get more ice time and I did get some penalty kill time and little things like that. But it's just like, it reiterated the fact that, like, being on a team, like, people care about you and like you are cared for. And I mean, every role matters. And I mean, I'm just a dressing room guy, and I mean, I don't offer much on the ice, but at the end of the day, that's still something. And I think that's obviously, I love thriving in that role, but I mean, now I felt appreciated about it. After those 4 days, I could see that I was appreciated, and I could see that I still needed to be on this team. Like, I didn't need to quit. I didn't, like, I honestly thought about quitting. Like, I was ready to call it quits during that little time period. But like I said, that team, that loyalty, and that camaraderie, it's just, you can't beat it.
Mm-hmm. So just before we're going to go to questions, I'd written down Nelson Mandela's words, because we talk about, and it doesn't matter if we're talking sport at the community level, at the provincial high performance, it doesn't matter. Sport is powerful. And Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where there was once only despair. It is more powerful than government in breaking down racial barriers. So I'm going to grab my phone. We have questions that have come in from the audience. And my colleague Becca is texting me, and she has texted me a lot. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to open this up if whoever wants to take some of these questions. What advice do you have for associations and coaches so they don't lose sight of the mental health aspects of amateur sport?
I can take a shot
Okay,
at that.
perfect.
Yeah, I think I noticed in hockey in particular in Canada, we're very focused on success. And we're very focused on the skill. And that's important. It's a rubric for how you can be successful and become a better hockey player. I would encourage coaches and managers, association leaders, to know that your athletes will perform their best when they're mentally well. So to check in with your athletes, how they're doing, how's their mood? Let's talk about emotional states. That is as important.
Performance is anything physical that you can do in any sport platform. So, the message there is mental performance is the same as mental health. And we should be looking at those two the same in all sport organizations.
Almost build it into we talk about it. It's practice, right? Like we learned there's probably 5 different power plays in all of hockey from the time you're 8 till you're in the pros, right? Literally, but you practice it every day to get better at it. I think that, mental, I believe that mental health needs to be built into our daily practice schedules. Like, you know, we need to practice it. And it's not about, oh, let's sit down and kumbaya with everybody. But, you know, there's lots of tools. There's lots of little things that we can do to check in on a daily basis. It's got to be part of skill development because it is a skill. I believe that, you know, this is a skill. And the more we can, you know, pay attention to it, the more we practice it, the better we get, and the better we get as a team.
So on that, I'm going to sort of evolve into another question, which maybe you guys being the younger ones and more connected social media wise, in the entrepreneurs in the space of connection and physical mental health, what's your advice on how to spread the word and the importance, especially in today's isolated environment? And you were just talking about, you know, online school, and that's a tough situation. I'm not saying you guys can't come in. Well, you're young. I just put
I'm getting home to play Atari soon. Frogger.
But, you know, people need to know it. We're isolated, and less so now, but it's been difficult. And how do you spread the word on the importance of it?
I mean, obviously we have the luxury now of social media, like you said, of FaceTime and of everything. I mean, it's not the same. That's the unfortunate part. Like, it's never going to be the same. And I mean, even online school for me, just not being present, it just like doesn't feel the same. And I mean, I know even that's for like conversations about mental health. Like, I feel for me, being present in the conversation is a lot easier to actually make that conversation happen. But I think that's just the same thing. Like, it's just like that reassurance that you continue to need. And then I know for me, being told that like somebody's proud of me, or even like telling myself that like I'm proud of myself, is a big thing as well. And I mean, I know this pandemic and the isolation is really taking a toll, but I think just continually checking. And I think, like Sheldon said, like, it's an everyday thing. Like, you can't just wake up and take it. Like, you can't just take days off all the time. Like, it's an everyday thing. And that's what I think we both had to learn. Like, you can't go into a day and just completely write off your mental health. Like, your physical health and mental health go hand in hand. And I mean, that's even with injuries, whatever it may be. And I mean, now the pandemic, like, everything is just going hand in hand. And I mean, if you put it into your everyday routine, and I mean, even sending a text every day to your friends or whatever it may be, everything helps, and everything's going to help in that healing and that journey. Obviously, we're all kind of in the same boat. But I think, yeah, just continually checking and continually reassuring people that it's going to be okay.
So you can comment on that too. I'm cutting you off only because I'm trying to sort of adapt a few of the questions, because, you know, one of the questions is from kids, about kids when they struggle. And, you know, again, there's sometimes that barrier of them going to parents, but also then, you know, you were talking the inclusion side, and sometimes people are coming up, maybe they're in a chair, and there's also a question though on the bullying side, and sort of going, you know, that's in hockey, or you know, boys will be boys situation, you know, and maybe being younger and having that connection is easier, but how do we deal with those situations of really trying to connect, and sometimes it's a stranger, which is better, but how do we do that?
I think everyone's experience is different, but the trauma is still there, like Sheldon mentioned earlier. So I think for me personally, I don't really connect with my parents about everything too well. So again, like Smitty mentioned, it was FaceTiming friends. It was keeping in touch with everyone, you know, people that you haven't talked to in years, you know, checking up, seeing how they're doing. I mean, everyone has their way of, you know, releasing some of the stress and stuff built up that they have going on mentally. And I think just talking to anyone, for me personally, works. But at a young age too, I mean, social media is a crazy thing. You got social media like bullying and online harassment, like whatever the case. Like as far as social media goes, I think reaching out to someone, being close to someone you're comfortable with, talking to them, someone who you can trust and be vulnerable with, I think is important. I think then you can kind of release everything that you have pent up. And again, for me personally, it was just about FaceTiming friends and keeping in touch with, you know, some people that I don't normally keep in touch with.
Well, I mean, I just watched Social Dilemma. I think it's time to rethink little bit of social media platforms for everybody, because I think just them themselves bring a lot of stress and anxiety to our young people. I mean, my daughter's in that 1996 generation, that Gen Y, where, are really that first generation that, started experiencing that sort of stuff. But, I think as a parent, the best thing that I can do for my kids is to learn this stuff, right? Take the time to really understand, what is online bullying and what are some of the things that I can do so that we can do the best we can to discuss this with our kids when needed. I think that sometimes our kids are more educated in this space than us as adults, because they're learning it. They're learning about these issues at schools. They're learning about inclusion. They're learning about bullying and online this. They're having people, I guess, so to me, what I say and what I know I had to do was to make sure that I was up to speed. I had the knowledge base to be able to have these conversations with my kids and to make it a conversation, because I think us as adults, we have to do a gut check around technology too. You know what I mean? And I think that, it can be a learning together about these things. But I think, there's no question that, I guess, when we look at technology, it's not the same. I mean, Zoom meetings were awesome for 2 weeks, right? But now it's a struggle, right? And it's that human connection. And I was pumped to get here today just to be around y'all, right? And I think that, listening to what Tyler was talking about too, and it's that, it's okay to be okay, right? Just because we struggle with mental health or mental illness doesn't mean that we have to be sick all the time, right? Like, it's okay to be okay. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to smile. But, sometimes that public pressure to be sad or to be this or to be that, and, is huge. But, for me, I had to learn that because, what was normal for me for so long in my life was sadness and anger and addiction, and I just was not used to being okay. I wasn't used to good things happening in my life. So that was really uncomfortable for me. So I had to get used to that and just, sit still with it.
Ryan, I'm going to sort of take a bit of that question, a bit of these few questions that are coming in. Sheldon talked about this rolling hill zone. So one of them is, how do you kind of stay there rather than letting the depression side really, like some of the tips to really, that it really takes over and building that resilience. Another question is the resilience in young people. So, it's all connected, but how do people learn how to do that?
Resilience, so there's 6 main resilience skills, and we talk about self-expertise, we talk about mindfulness, mental fitness, mental health, energy management, hardiness. Those are kind of the 6 ways that you build your personal resilience. We do know that it's a journey, and that daily practice, small bits of practice, is how to get there. These are actual skills that are trainable. And if somebody's starting down this road saying, how can I be more, how can I stay on the rolling hill and not go through the valleys and the mountains? I would suggest the first step that you would take there is building your self-expertise. So understanding what stresses you out and trying to recognize your emotional state. That's a really powerful thing, is to pin down what emotion you're experiencing at any given time. And it's easy to do, right? We have some tools in headversity that help you do that, but you don't need technology. You can actually just write that down or just make note of it. Am I feeling angry right now? Am I feeling shame? Am I feeling sadness? Am I feeling elation? To point out your emotional state is a really powerful and difficult, sometimes, first step. But to have daily practice in that, pinning down what emotion am I feeling, is a really strong first step to building resilience.
So this one might be tough. I don't know. It's somebody's writing in about, we're talking a lot about how sport has helped all of us. and yet that sort of has been our life. But what about these communities? And we come across people who don't, whether it's family, whether it's community, whether it's a culture, that don't necessarily have sport or necessarily embrace sport. So how do we reach them? Look at you all jump on it.
Yeah.
No, but it's tough. And yet, especially when, I talk about new Canadians because, again, we talk about sport being inclusive, right? And so you get to meet people, but sometimes they're schools don't often, a lot of them are not, they're pushing sport out. So we have many situations and more stress for kids. So sorry, I cut you off.
No, you don't have to be sorry at all. I mean, I think again, we talk about being inclusive and diverse and all of this stuff. And I think that we've got a long ways to go there as well. Right. So again, we've got to practice. And I think that, the gap is we think we're doing a great job, but the reality is maybe we can be doing a better job. And I think that, there's lots of areas. I mean, we look at art, right? We look at the arts and we look at the cultures and we look at dance. I mean, I learned how to dance on Battle of the Blades and it was awesome. I loved it. And that's a whole other community. And I learned a whole other side of, activity, right? And culture, learning how to dance and learning this other side. And, and I think that, we need to make sure that we're inclusive of all of that, right? And, and understand the benefits of each one, because I think that they all, and it goes back to what you're talking about, Ryan. It's about feeling like belonging, right? And sometimes we don't have to sit beside our buddy and have this or our friend that went through the same experience that I did, right? And sit there and say, geez, how are you feeling today, Joe? Oh, not too bad, Brad. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. To me, it's just being together and just showing up and playing together. We know that kids, they learn through play, right? So whether that's play with musical instruments, play through art, play through sport. And I think that is just being able to recognize that, I think is huge. Sport is not your only avenue to capture a lot of the things that we're talking about today. But I also think as a community and as communities, I think there's been acknowledgement across our country and around the world, that we can do a better job at inclusivity. And I think, looking at Jumpstart, I think there's a big initiative here going on in Calgary as well. So, we just got to keep getting better and keep inviting people in, right?
Exactly. And I think that's really important because this panel, we get sport. Yeah. But again, we can get all of this from different avenues. There are times when I've been lonely. I go to the dog park and people connect through dogs, right? And it's finding something of belonging. Yeah. Ryan, this question is specifically for you. What was your biggest trigger moving forward into recovery? What was it that really helped you?
For me, I traveled a lot for rehab. I went to Philadelphia, I went to Thailand. I've traveled all over, and I've met a lot of people, a lot of patients, and I've seen kids who have been in a lot worse situations than mine, and they don't feel sorry for themselves. They live every day, with a smile on their face. They go and have fun, and that for me, that was like, wow, it kind of just hit me. Obviously, I want to be an inspirational character for them, but to me, they were inspiring me to keep going and just live every day like it's your last, right? Because you never know. And for me, it was just having a smile on my face and working hard towards my goal. But seeing them, I think, just brought a lot of joy to me, and got me thinking, they never got to live a full life, normal life till they were 18, right? They've been spending most of their lives in the hospital. So for me, I think just hanging out with them, talking to them, seeing the smile on their face and just having fun, I think was the biggest motivating factor for me to get better. So just a lot of those things, I think just seeing other people who might be in worse situations with a smile on their face, not thinking about anything, not feeling sorry for themselves, I think was the biggest motivating factor for me to keep pushing forward.
Awesome. So just as we continue to have questions coming in, but, I'm just going to give each of panelists, just as a lot of the questions are about the recovery side and the tips that you used, because again, everybody's different. And we talk about a social connection, which we haven't been able to have, and it is nice to be in, and to be in the Hall of Fame, to be here physically and to see people and to be around. But as you look at sort of this journey, and you guys have talked about journey, and it really is, maybe you can each talk and give the audience, because a lot of the questions are just on tips. And so, sometimes we know that when we talk about what helped one person, might not connect to somebody, but it might really, make an impact on somebody and say, yes, because that's the way I am. So I don't know if I can just go around. Tyler, start with you. Just, sort of what the biggest thing for you was the recovery side and continuing to be, you've talked about the awareness, but just what you can give people, like.
Yeah, I think with the recovery, obviously it was very foreign to us. I mean, none of us have ever been through a situation like this. Like, how do we go about it? What do we do? What outlet do we use? So I think that was the biggest kind of learning challenge for me, was like, what is going to help me? What is going to work for me? So it took some time. And I think ever since the start, like every kind of interview I did, even in my speeches, I think I always try to reiterate, it's one day at a time. And that's what I always try to grasp, is I don't have to look so far into the future and try and figure out if I'm going to be okay at this time. I literally just have to focus on today and just take it one day at a time. And then also, one of the biggest things I kind of follow is self-care is not selfish. And that was the biggest thing for me when I was leaving Humboldt. It was like, I'm a selfless kid. Like, why would I be selfish and put myself first and go home and focus on myself? Like, why? That's just not in my realm. Like, I'm not going to do that. So once I actually kind of was able to put that in fruition and take that and like run with that, then I think that's what started me on my healing journey, is I can be selfish about it. This is my life. This is my happiness. And and then also with the happiness side is, you can have bad days. Like, there's no problem waking up and having a bad day and laying in bed. But I think having a bad day, you still need to embrace those days. You can't just like completely put that by the wayside. You still need to embrace that day and just figure out what works for you. I mean, I think for me, it was a long time before I figured out what truly worked for me in my healing and in my recovery. And now I have my outlets, and now I know what I need to do when I'm having that bad day, or when I know a trigger is coming on, or when I know something is going to happen. Like, I think just finding what works for you and holding on to that. I think people always try to mimic what somebody else is doing, or take their advice and completely just do what that person's doing. I think everybody just needs to be selfish about it and find, whether that's journaling, whether that's going for a workout, whether that's whatever it may be. I think I know what I need to do now for my outlet, and I'm still learning about that, but I think people just need to always rely on what they need to do for their own personal healing.
Awesome.
Yeah, to touch on that, I think every person throughout their life goes through a phase where they feel lost. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. And I think for me personally, was communicating through FaceTime, text messages, emails, whatever the case. And that was like the start for me. And I think, the next step for me after that was just to express myself. And through that, I mean, sport, that's how I express myself. I play sports. I, post about it on social media. I show myself that way. But for everyone, or for most people, some like sports isn't for them, right? It's, arts, it's music, it's, smarts, like all which things I don't have, right? So I don't express myself that way. So, I mean, I feel like if people have an avenue to sort of express themselves and be passionate about something and kind of go down that avenue, make connections, make, opportunities from that, I guess, whatever their specialty is, I think is really important. But again, there's no magic answer. I mean, it's all about how you feel. And I think the biggest step is, if you ever feel lost, is just to communicate and, look for the next best thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived a very privileged life. The adversity that I have faced is a micro dot compared to our panel members. Privileged to get into medical school and be in a caregiving profession. And now that I'm in a caregiving profession and I run a company that literally cares for people, the adversity that I face is just around that compassion, fatigue, emotional exhaustion piece. And I've talked to Sheldon about this before. And what I want to reiterate, a couple of the great points that have been made. One, you got to take care of yourself, and that's not selfish. And the other piece that we've talked a lot about today is around community. So I rely so much on my mentors, my family members. When I'm feeling like I have that inside, like I can't be there for the next person, the next patient, I really rely on those around me as my kind of personal board of directors to help me get through that compassion fatigue and that emotional exhaustion. So in addition to the, like, you got to take care of yourself to be there for the next person, I think we have to rely more on each other.
Yeah, and I just just want to tell a little story because I think it's about action. And you know, I remember getting all the phone calls when your accident happened, and I started getting all these phone calls to answer. You know, I was having supper, and all of a sudden this phone started ringing, and it was all the media and stuff, and I'm trying to answer these media calls, and then I remember picking up the phone and phoning another guy, and another guy called me, and there was 4 of us that ended up getting on a phone call from our bus accident in Swift Current. And it was all about, you know, and it was just about, I remember the conversation about one another. It's like, oh, I don't know, like, should we go? Like, I feel we need to go, but should we go? And I'm like, frickin', we need to go, because we can relate to being on the pavement. We can relate, and we can take hope. We can show people that, you know what, there's some hope here. And we didn't have a frickin' clue what we were doing. We didn't know. All we knew is that we needed to show up. Right? We just needed to go there, and we were there for 2 days. And I think it was one of the most important things that we've done, not only for our own selves, but maybe we reached some people. And I think that's basically what I'm trying to say is this, to me, it's about action, right? It's about, you know, making the decision when you're not feeling well to go for a walk, making the decision when you're not feeling well to pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm not feeling well. And taking the risk. To me, I had to learn how to do that, and I had to be vulnerable for a long time before it became normal for me to do that. And I think that's basically what Ryan's saying, and what I heard the rest of the panel is, like, you know, for us to feel better, we have to take action, right? We have to take action to say, you know, my brain's telling me I'm not going to hang out with those people, right? Meanwhile, you know what? Let your brain stay at home and just take the body. Right? Just take the body and the brain will follow. And I had to, like, that was my motto for a long time, because my brain would tell me that I don't want to go. Right? You don't need to go. I don't want to go. Right? But it was like, once I showed up, I felt great, and I was always excited when I left there. But I mean, that's kind of what I have to keep it simple. And I think that's, you know, sometimes we can complicate the shit out of this stuff, right? And to me, we need to keep it simple. Just take action, do something simple, right? Do a good deed for somebody. Go, you know, shovel your neighbor's walk. That always makes me feel better, right? Something like that. And I know that season's coming, so there's your tip for the day.
No, it's true. I mean, I think, as you know, questions, everything is about tips, and, you know, again, everybody's journey is different, but it's about having a voice, you know, and let that voice be heard. If it's your voice, listen to the voices around you. You know, sometimes it is family, sometimes it's other people, sometimes it's strangers, sometimes it's stuff on the web or social media that can connect you. But it is a journey. And, you know, as we wrap up, I want to thank you guys, Tyler, Ryan, Sheldon. Thank you guys. You know, these panelists gave their time. Hopefully everybody in the audience enjoyed the conversation. But I think the key from this is, don't let the conversation stop. Let it keep going. Continue that conversation, regardless if you're a parent, you're in sport, whatever role you have, the people around you, keep that conversation going. So if you want more information on headversity, Ryan, thank you to you and your team for setting this up. Go to headversity.com. For my team at Sport Calgary, you know, sport at every level. We're an advocate for sport within this community of Calgary. So if you want more information, if you want to see member profiles, sport groups that, you know, sports you've never heard of that we support that exist in this community, go to sportcalgary.ca. So thank you, everybody who joined us on this panel. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, guys. Ryan, Beijing 2022 is coming up quickly. We look forward to it.
No pressure, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. No, it's, thank you, guys. Thanks.